Hello, everyone. This is Sharan Kalwani with a quick talk on open source technology response to COVID-19. Without further ado, let me get started here. Okay, so here we go. A little bit about background, then the ventilator design, and then how we're using open source for a ventilator design and AI. I don't think I need to go too much in COVID-19 background, but one of the things that has been noticed is how it affects difficulty in breathing and causes medical attention needing to be paid to it. So because of the way COVID-19 attacks us, it turns out for very acute cases, we do need ventilators. Basically what that is a machine that's controlled by a microprocessor to operate a valve so that it sends in fresh air along with the temperature and humidity. And then it also does the work of the lung to take out air from our lungs. Basically, it's breathing for us. So this is what a ventilator used to look like in the old days. As you can see, the oxygen cylinder, pressure valves, and hand-operated controls out there. This is what a modern day ventilator looks like with, of course, digital controls. In any case, both of them need a trained technician or anesthesiologist to manage this. How it works is like it has a mechanical unit, a pump, valve, etc., and then a humidifier. Then it sends air in, so you intubate the patient and then close it out. And all of this nowadays is microprocessor or computer control, which means software is involved. What is tough about ventilators is modern day ventilators cost an awful lot of money, anywhere from 18 to 35,000. That's why typically in hospitals, you only would have a few ventilators on hand. But with more people getting impacted by COVID, there is potential for shortage. Again, not everyone needs it, but those who need it, then they need it now. And if you look at the cost, many countries can't even afford them. They already have a tough time managing their healthcare system, and need of specialization, specialized equipment makes it tough, especially costly. So this is where open source comes in, so that we could provide his solution at low cost. What I'm going to describe is a Raspberry Pi based solution. There are others also from NASA and Fermilab that I'm aware of, but let us focus on the Raspberry Pi. As you all know, it just costs $35, and basically it runs on a very low cost microprocessor chip designed by ARM. It does run Linux, and in fact nowadays there's a 64-bit version available. And it has a whole bunch of software compilers, everything. So recently in March, a team in Colombia used a design from MIT, and they built this ventilator just buying parts from plumbing and car parts stores. And they were able to mechanically put together, use the code, and it's only about like 200 lines of Python code that they used to control the ventilator, and the Pi machine was running it. I'll have a picture of that. Clearly, you all know a lot about the Raspberry Pi, so this slide here is just a reprise, but it has been very instrumental in also furthering open source. And what I'm really proud about is how it's being used in the fight against COVID-19. Here's a picture of a Raspberry Pi. It's got USB ports, HDMI ports, in fact, everything that you need to run a little small handheld computer. Here's the actual size. As you can see, it's smaller than a smartphone, or fits in the palm of a large person's hand. And with that hardware that is pretty reliable and works, the key is all the software, the open source software. So once they put together this design from MIT with locally sourced part, they actually used it on a set of artificial lungs and proved that the equipment ran nonstop without failure for 5 days. Then they repeated this test with animals, and that it passed. And then late in May, we started human trials. I bet by the time we see this Thunder Talk, it would already be being approved in approval stage uh, in lots of parts of the world. This is what it looks like. You can see out here the little pump out here. There's a little tablet, and then the Raspberry Pi, and then here's a artificial dummy with intubated and running the whole thing. And this is basically a lab test or mechanical test. If you want to see more about it, here's the YouTube link you can go to. It's about 8 minutes long and describes the entire scenario. So this is a really great win for open source, that it's saving lives. Well, this is not the only one. The other one that I'd like to share with you is how current high performance computing combined with AI and big data is being used in the battle to fight COVID-19. Now, a little bit about a little background of where AI is being used, AI and open source code. In the past, drug discovery took a long time, sometimes several decades. Physically, someone would dig through the current literature, which is a tedious manual task. Then they'll study the drug, they study the virus, study the DNA. And then once they've figured out which might be potential, then they actually have to go for human trials. And that takes, again, another decade or so. So if it took them so long just to understand the virus, the DNA of the virus, and then potential drugs, this is where open source AI is proving to be a winner. Recently, they ran some open source AI algorithms over a weekend, and they searched a lot of databases as well as looking at the different procedures of reports from hospitals on what worked, what didn't work. And then within 3 days, it was within the weekend, they were able to get 3 potential methods and procedures. Then the other thing is looking at drug discovery. Either it comes up with a new drug, or we have a huge database of existing drugs. So what a lot of folks feel is no single drug would work against it. So they're using AI to search for multiple drugs from different databases that they have, and therefore do lots of these searches, which if done by manually would take a long time. But open source AI algorithms can go through hundreds of them, cross-check, cross-reference many times. Here are about 3 examples, Oxford-based. They were able to connect to the Scripps Institute and go through 15,000 drugs, come up with some promises. Helix, a company set up by the co-inventor of Viagra, they repurposed their system. Yet there was another one that figured out the drug for rheumatoid arthritis could be a potential treatment, and they're actually using it in trials. And there's many more. Even they're using AI to scan X-rays to figure out how far it's attacking the lungs. And they are able to do it within 20 seconds and with 96% accuracy. All of which I've described is only a small sample of it, and they're all open source techniques. And several large sites have put together their compute resources. They call it the COVID-19 High Performance Computing Consortium. They all run Linux on literally 113,000 servers out there. There's lots of links that I've provided. And they're giving free use to scientists and medical staff so they can try out various DNA and molecular combinations using open source software to come up with potential treatments for COVID-19. So in quick summary, I'm very proud to say that there's a lot we're doing, but there's a lot more we can do. Low cost ventilators are just a start. I would love to see open source used to design other important PPE equipment. And of course, brute force searches using open source AI is a really, multiplier effect. Imagine armies of people doing this and each having AI at their disposal, so it could shorten the time. So with that, I'd like to thank you for listening to my Thunder Talk, and hope you can send me email if you have any questions. Thank you.